Today we're talking playing with the big boys.
Now, Christian,
Yes, Laura.
who came up with that topic?
Well, I don't know how I got through creative. Do we have a creative?
Big boys, look, I think we know what we mean, right?
Well, but we might.
I think we want to focus on the professional services angle,
Yes, big boys,
but
big toys. Is that what we're talking about?
we're talking about moving in markets that have traditionally been locked up
Yep.
by bigger organisations, or as a smaller business, a smaller supplier, a smaller professional services company, serving or supplying to big business.
Yes, it's a very scary topic because there's a whole bunch of ways that people find their way into, or try to find their way into, working with bigger businesses. But there's lots of challenges.
Yeah.
There's lots of risks, but then there's potentially,
Huge upside,
enormous
right?
rewards.
Yeah.
So I've got a few thoughts on this, but if you want to kick things off.
Do I?
No, you don't have to. But my first thing I think about is, how does a smaller business, I don't mean tiny,
Yeah.
I mean, let's say under 200 staff, deal with one of the monster businesses and going through all the things like procurement and finance and just all the bureaucracy and the slow turning wheels that go with the bigger.
Well, that's a starting point, isn't it, to actually understand the mechanisms that go behind.
Mechanisms.
Yeah, is that a word?
Mechanisms.
No, there's.
You might be right. I defer to the lawyer.
You've got it. You do actually have to understand those processes,
100%.
right? Because you can't think that you're just going to deal with the person you're dealing with and the deal's going to get done. That might happen when you're playing with
A private business.
private business and the person that you're talking to is the decision maker.
Yep.
But you've got to go through all of these steps. So that's the boring stuff, and we like to skim over the boring
Yeah, no,
stuff.
it's
But
boring. Let's move on.
it's important to know that if you're dealing with someone in a business, you've got to know that there's probably a procurement team behind them.
Yep.
You've got to get yourself set up as a supplier on the system.
Yep.
If you don't do all of those things, you won't get paid.
And get purchase orders. So I would treat, so for instance, first I want to start the overarch by saying that I think that everything is on the table as far as opportunities for smaller business to work with big. And I think that bigger businesses right now are going to go through a fair bit of pressure, let's say in Australia, but certainly the globe. From a cost-based point of view, they're going to be going probably and looking at fine-tooth comb of some of their existing agreements, relationships. And if someone can come along that has a skill set that is elite, but smaller, they're in the game. They're in the game now, and you might be able to. Now, there's in some areas going to be more bureaucracy, and in some areas are going to be really fast cut through if it's an essential service.
Yeah, so you can't look at your own size and rule yourself out as a player.
Totally
in the market.
agree. And you can, I think we talked about this the other day, you can partner with other businesses that can fill some gaps that have some space.
Yep.
But when you get to the line of the bigger business, you got to think about, we talked about client DNA recently. You're probably not going to get to the CEO, and you're probably not going to get to any of the big head. But you might be at procurement, HR, you might be at dealing with the legal team, you might be dealing with individual team, and then trying to shoehorn your way into the whole business, right?
Well, that's really I think a lot of people when they work with a big business don't realise that if you lose your one contact, the impact that can have on your supply. So you have to diversify. You actually have to put your tentacles in as a small business.
So you're saying I'm at the big company, I'm your contact, and I decide to leave the business one day, or a year later I leave the business.
When I ring, someone picks up the phone and says, "Who the hell are you?"
That's right. We don't
My
know
mate's going to be doing the work for us now. Thanks.
Oh, but I'm a supplier. I'm a registered supplier.
So what?
Yeah, who are you, mate? We've got 80 of them.
So
yeah.
That's all that negative, but I think what we'd love to talk about is the ability for a smaller business to actually deliver something non-traditional, something new, something creative, agile, interesting to a big business. And that is actually where the magic is.
That is where the magic is, and it's certainly possible because companies are doing it.
Yeah.
I think we, as usual, as our nature, we fall into the pitfalls and hurdles and risks, and we sort of say, how do we navigate those? But I do think you have to really think about your pitch and sell to a private business or to, I'd treat it more like a government client in the bureaucracy stakes, and think that the decision-making chain, you've got to try and work out where the authority is to make a decision, because you can waste 6 months, 12 months, 18 months
to the wrong person.
talking to the wrong person, right? And they even might want to help you, but you can't, to break through that.
How do you get the pitch right?
Well,
that's back to client DNA, and that's actually, I think the smaller players have the time and energy to actually find out what it is that their prospective client wants and needs. Whereas if you're a bigger supplier in the market, that's it. What you supply,
have what we offer.
It is what it is.
Yep.
Whereas if you've got a skill set, if you've got people, if you've got a product, or you're developing products, you can go to one of these big players and say, what do you need?
We've got something interesting, or we can develop new things. Can we make
what sort of team do you need? We'll pull it together. We'll make it for you.
Which is harder. The bigger you get, which is harder to do, the bigger you get.
Yeah.
I think that the key person leaves. We talked about that. We talked about procurement. But I want to just one more, because we're talking to Christopher Critias soon. He's going to
be more interesting than us.
Far more interesting than us. Come on, mate. And I think that a couple of quick things. If you can work out the client DNA of your individual contact in a larger business, you can work out what they are actually asked to do in their role, and you can support them. That's a start. If you can work out what the longer term plans of certain parts of the businesses are, and you can get as much intel as you can as to what makes them tick, what their longer term plans are, and you can just start with little offerings that fix a big problem for them, right? Fix a big problem.
Yeah.
If you know that they've had a certain supplier for a long period of time, that they're vulnerable at this time, you've got to look at what find out as much as you can about what that supplier is bringing, and maybe where some of their failures are, or over time their weaknesses are. If they're big and you're small, you're agile and they're slow, right? It's just about...
And you know something we've talked about before as well, just because you're small, don't think that your value is actually being cheaper.
No.
Do not cut off your nose to spite your face, because, you might get in the door on cheaper rates, but that is going to destroy your business.
It can. And that is, it's a commercial decision, I agree with you.
But that can't be the only thing that you are selling is a cheaper price.
I totally agree. And I think that
someone will always come in cheaper.
And how are you going to service that client if you need to bring in elite talent later down the line and you can't get the margin out of it, and you're trying to actually attract the right type of people to service this monster client? Also, this is just a little bit of advice. Don't let a big client, it might be that exciting, but don't let them change your mission or the DNA of your business in a way that you can't retrieve. Because you can end up in a situation where you've got 40 clients over here and you go after the big fish and you catch the big fish and you end up servicing the big fish, and it just sucks all the oxygen out of the rest of your business. And it's a really hard decision to turn it away.
And that's only one client.
That's one.
If you lose that client, you're dead in the water, right?
Correct. And this happens all the time. And it happens in mining booms, and companies go and chase mining work and they end up leaving all these clients behind, and they can't get back. Cost base goes up and you can't go back to your existing client.
So, moral of all of this, the story.
I don't know what the moral of this story is.
Doesn't matter how big you are.
Yeah.
Something we love in the All Founders office, the overreach.
Oh, we love an overreach.
Go for the overreach.
We love an overreach.
Pitch it and work out how to do it later, right?
Not quite that far, but...
And don't undersell yourself.
That I agree with.
Stay true to what you are as a business.
And you're always in the game.
And, if it's not this one, it'll be the next.
That's right. So
that's the pep talk for the day.
The pep talk.